Hello, everyone, and welcome into the 11th episode of Jack's Mailbag, the series where I answer your Gamecock athletics questions. If you have a question you want answered on next week's episode, be sure to drop a comment below on this YouTube video, or I'll have a post on the Gamecock Central Insiders Forum where you can drop all your questions on that thread. This week, we're going to be talking a little bit of football, a little bit of the transfer portal, and a lot of baseball. South Carolina kicks off a huge 3-game series this weekend. With number 4 Kentucky coming into town. Going to be a big weekend. I'll be there for all 3 games this weekend. So if you see me, come say hi. But for right now, let's get into our questions, starting with this first question from Jason Height 4562. What's your opinion of the NIL and transfer portal? So where do I even begin? Just being honest here, I think the transfer portal is good. It gives players the option and freedom to, it's kind of like free agency a little bit, go where you want to go. And I think it's always good because if you're, let's say, for instance, football is a good example here. And this is, I think, probably the most prominent example. If you're competing as a quarterback for a starting job and you're just not going anywhere, you're kind of buried on the depth chart or whatever, you can transfer the next year and get a fresh start somewhere else and potentially play more. I think that's kind of the idea behind it. And it's crazy how much college football and college sports have changed over the last 10 years. It was not like this when I was growing up as a kid, and it's changed drastically. And, kind of covering it all on a day-to-day basis is just, it's different. So, and then NIL it kind of goes hand in hand, I guess. Look, for a little bit, I'm going to be honest, when I was growing up, I kind of thought that the way, players not getting paid was kind of just, they're getting a scholarship, they're getting a free education, this and that. I always thought that was the right decision to not pay the players. But as you get older and as you kind of see, you kind of, you need to get what you're worth, then I think it makes more sense for players to get paid. Because, I mean, think about it. The perfect example comes back to the NCAA football video game back in the early 2010s when the game's coming out, but the players aren't getting a dime for their likeness or whatever in the game, or jersey sales, stuff like that, where players should get some sort of cut. And the NCAA and all these other conferences and leagues, they're making all the profit off these players. And I mean, is that fair? No, I don't think so. I think players deserve a cut of it. But I mean, at the same time, it's changed so much of the game that we all, know and love. I don't think it's not the same as it was 10 years ago, right? I mean, besides, conference realignment and all that sort of stuff, I mean, I can go down a rabbit hole and talk for an hour about this stuff. But I think it's becoming more and more monetary and more like the professional leagues, which is, it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. It's just, when you don't want players to, they deserve to get paid, but at the same time, you don't want college sports to become all about money. And I feel like that's kind of the road we're heading down. It's becoming more of a business sort of thing, and you're seeing players leave different schools for the money. And I think at some point we have to remember that you play these sports while you're getting paid to in some cases to play them. You're playing it for the love of the game and having fun at the end of the day. And I think that's kind of where that gets lost in translation with all the different aspects of what's going on in college sports now. But that's a long-winded answer. But and I hope hopefully nothing, I don't get in trouble for saying what I'm saying. But that's kind of just how I feel about it. And I think it's definitely different, but you got to adjust with the times, right? You got to move on. You got to adjust with the times, and that's kind of the way. It's not slowing down anytime soon. I can tell you that. And the deals are only going to get bigger and bigger. And it is good though to see the players getting at least something out of it. And it's it's different seeing college athletes in all these commercials on my TV and stuff. It was not like that a long time ago. Next question also comes from Jason Height 4562, who asks an interesting question. I think you guys are going to like this. How do you think our football team is going to be this year? Oh, man. I'm going to be honest. Gonna be honest, straight up, I just don't see it this year, man. I don't see a world in which I think they can get bowl. I think South Carolina can get bowl eligible this year. Beyond that, I don't see them being, they won 5 games last year. And that was before Texas and Oklahoma are joining the SEC. So just think about how much tougher it's going to get when those guys are, in the conference now. I think Clemson's going to be maybe better this year. South Carolina's got a tougher. I mean, every year the schedule's tough, right? But I think this year it can look a little tougher. I'm looking at the schedule right now. Old Dominion, that should be a win. At Kentucky, that's a toss up, but I think that should be a win too. LSU, they don't have Jaden Daniels anymore. And they don't have Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, guys like that. So maybe that's a win. I mean, look, these first 3 weeks of the year are all toss ups. And I think in some scenario, you need to go 2-1. So that would mean you need to split those first 2 SEC contests. Then you get Akron. That should be a win. You should be 3-1 or 2-2. But I think 3-1 is probably a little bit more ideal. Then you get the Juice Wells return to Columbia on October 5th. That is going to be that's probably my number one game of the year right now, just because of the hype going into that one. And I think ticket sales kind of reflect that, as I'm seeing the lowest ticket prices for that game are $117 right now. But I don't see South Carolina winning that game. I think, as long as everyone's healthy for Ole Miss, this team's way too loaded. I think Lane Kiffin did a heck of a job in the transfer portal, and I think it's going to be tough there. Then you get arguably the toughest part of the schedule right here, which is back-to-back weeks where you're on the road, and it's at Alabama, then at Oklahoma. I don't think you're beating Alabama. Even with Kalen DeBoer being the head coach there now and no Nick Saban, this and that, it's still Alabama. I think their run game is going to be way too good and way too much for South Carolina to stop this year. And it's always tough winning at Bryant-Denny. Then you get to go to Oklahoma, which is part of the new schedule this year, with Oklahoma joining the conference. I don't know. Oklahoma could be good. They could be a mixed bag. I'm not sure. But for right now, I'm going to say that's probably a loss. Then you get Texas A&M at home to kick off November. And with a new coach, Mike Elko at Texas A&M, I'm not sure what to expect. I couldn't even tell you. This one I could see going either way. And then at Vanderbilt, November 9th, I think you should win that game. No excuses to lose to Vanderbilt. Missouri at home. I do think you probably will not win that game. I think Missouri is a very good team. And then, Wofford the next week at home. I also think that South Carolina is going to win that game. I think that should be a given. And then Clemson to end the year at Clemson. Honestly, I mean, look, the last few years it's been a lot easier, a lot harder, actually, I should say, to kind of pick that game. And I think if I'm not mistaken, I think I drank the Kool-Aid and kind of thought that South Carolina was going to get that 6th win and be back on the map, this and that, get to a bowl game, get another win over your arch rival. And they had one of the worst offensive showings I've ever seen. So I don't know. I think they're probably not going to win that game. I don't know. It's a little early to tell, but I'm assuming the Vegas line right now is probably about 5 to 5.5 wins, if not less, for South Carolina this year. I think there's a way to get to 6. You have to beat the teams you're supposed to beat, which means you'd have to beat Old Dominion, Akron, Wofford. That's 3 wins right there. Vanderbilt. I think you can get one of the 2 early ones against Kentucky and LSU. So that's 5 wins, and then you need another one elsewhere. And I think you can get that maybe against Texas A&M or Oklahoma. So I think 6 is probably ideal. And look, I think at the same time, I'm just going to be honest here, you got to keep your expectations realistic, right? Because look, this is South Carolina. This isn't, Texas, Alabama, one of these premier SEC schools where you're expected to win 10 games every year. That's just not the case in South Carolina. That's no slouch on anyone. But, I mean, if you're looking at South Carolina's football history, it hasn't exactly been, outside of the early 2010s, it hasn't exactly been that kind of success. And getting to a bowl game right now should be the next step in the right direction for South Carolina after missing out on a bowl game last year, only winning 5 games in what should have been a bowl eligible season, but it wasn't. So, anything less than 6 wins this year is a disappointment, in my opinion. And we'll see what happens. Though a lot of things have to go right for them to also get 6 wins. How's Lenore Sellers going to look at quarterback this year? I know he runs a lot. I know he's shown flashes, but is he going to be a consistent passer in the SEC? And can he be an efficient one at that? And then from there, I mean, that's just one part of the equation, right? Who's going to be catching passes from him? I don't think South Carolina has the best receiving core. I think you really have to go out and get a good receiver in this next wave of the transfer portal. And then from there, how's your running game going to look? I think the running game is going to be a lot better for South Carolina this year because let's be honest, it was not that good last year. But if they can really get a good running game this year and do a decent enough job in the passing game, then I think your offense is in a good spot. And then I also expect the defense to play a lot better this year. I think towards the end of the year in November, I think you saw what Clayton White's defense could do when they make the switch to that type of defense they were playing there. And I just think they got a lot more dogs on defense this year. You get DQ Smith back, Nicky Manwari, guys like that, and a bunch of newcomers too. I think it really bodes well for South Carolina to get 6 wins this year somehow, some way. Our next question comes from Papa DeLuca, who asks, current thoughts on the shortstop position. Lee Ellis looked very good at the plate Saturday, but obviously had the killer error in game 2. Also, I tagged you in another thread, RE transfer portal, or transfer eligibility. Any chance Jordan Carry-On enters the mix this season? So I'll start with the back half of that question. Doesn't seem like Jordan Carry-On is going to play this year. I just don't see it happening. The whole transfer eligibility thing is very weird. But at this point, it does not seem like he's going to play. And I'll tell you why. Someone asked Mark Kingston on Thursday during his media availability what the plan would be if Lee Ellis got hurt at shortstop this weekend. And God forbid that happens, right? You hope for the best with Will Tippett also, not being available this weekend. What happens then? I believe the plan would be for Talmadge LeCroy to slide over to shortstop, Gavin Cassis to slide over to third, and then I presume you put Tyler Causey at first base and Parker Nolan's at second base. So a lot of shifting is going to have to happen, but I think that's kind of the scenario they have to go down because Carry-On, more likely than not, is not eligible right now and won't be until next year. So that's the first part of that question. How do what's my outlook on shortstop right now? I think Will Tippett's your best option. I do think he's turned it around over the last few weeks. And ever since I asked Mark Kingston about, why do you continue to run Tippett out there despite his struggles and stuff, and what gives you confidence he's going to turn around? Ever since that question was asked, and ever since Mark, gave a honest response about how he believes Tippett's going to turn around and all that, he really has played a lot better. And it's just switching to the right-handed side of the plate and just hitting right-handed instead of switch hitting has been a drastic change for him. And his defense has been pretty sharp this year. With Lee Ellis, I liked what I saw at the plate, but defensively, and I was critical about it in my game story and leaving the yard and stuff. His error at shortstop in the second game of that doubleheader last Saturday against Arkansas changed the complete dynamic of that game, because you go from Dylan Eskew being 1 out away from getting out of a jam or whatever, but instead you have the error there, and it sets off a whole wave of bad things in that inning. And Arkansas, which it should have been a tie game, 0-0 at the end of 1.5 innings, but instead it's 3-0 Razorbacks. And from there, it's South Carolina. They tried their best to recover, but at that point, it's like you're already down 3-0, and the bats have to wake up and that sort of thing. So I think Ellis is going to have a better weekend now that he's going to probably be starting all 3 games, and his reps will be a lot more consistent. So I think as long as he plays well defensively at shortstop, a lot of balls are going to probably be hitting his direction this weekend. There's no doubt about it there. But I think if you're able to, play good defense and hit like he had been doing at the plate, I think he'll fit in just fine in this lineup. Our final question comes from BBUSC Cox, who asks, "Hey Jack, with the NCAA ratifying unlimited transfers, why hasn't Carry On been declared eligible?" Honestly, and like I said before, he's probably not playing for South Carolina this year. If he hasn't played at this point, then I don't see it happening. Um, and it's just, we haven't asked Mark Kingston about it in months, but at this point, it's just like nothing's changed. And look, I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with the transferring rules and stuff. It's all very complex and stuff. And I feel like, in some cases, guys are able to, make it work, but in other cases, there's probably different stipulations that we don't even know about that are probably, the reason why he hasn't been able to play. And I'm not sure what's going to change, but I don't expect him to play this year. If something does change, good for him, good for the team. Gives them another shortstop. But for right now, I don't see it. But that is going to do it for this week's episode of Jack's Mailbag. I hope you guys enjoyed all my responses to these questions and stuff. If you have a question you want answered on next week's episode, be sure to drop it in the comments section below on this YouTube video, like I said, or I'll have a post on the Gamecock Central Insiders Forum on GamecockCentral.com, where you can drop all your questions you want. Football, basketball, baseball, anything y'all want to talk about, let's do it. I'm down for it. But yeah, that is going to do it for this week's episode. Again, South Carolina baseball kicks off a 3-game series with number 4 Kentucky this evening at 7 p.m. Should be a good one. I'll be there for all 3 games, like I said. Until then, take it easy, guys.